So welcome everybody. I'm Kim Branch. I work with Chicago Association Management and help Ed Graziano out with our Community online network. This is actually an event that we are running through Community, and we call it the Next Level. And it's board and committee trainings, but really everyone, I think, who is in a leadership position can benefit from all the trainings that we do. And today we're really fortunate to have with us Valerie Leonard. She has her own business called Nonprofit Utopia, which is another online kind of a networking / best practices Q&A. Valerie, you can tell them a lot more about it than I can, but it's pretty cool. And we are welcoming you to the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, which is a book by John C. Maxwell that hopefully some of you have gotten a copy of or are working on getting a copy of. It's recommended the 25th anniversary copy at this point. Shelby, do you mind going next slide? Today, we are going to have everyone's microphones muted. And of course, if you don't want to be on video, you can always shut your video off. If you do have any questions, we're asking that you put it into the chat box today. And then we will get to those for sure, probably on the latter half of the presentation, if we haven't already covered them by then. If you want to introduce yourself, we're all about networking. Please absolutely put your name and your, I don't know if that's mine, that came up all of a sudden, sorry about that. Please put your name, your company, what you do, whatever it is that you'd like to do. If you recognize anybody else, obviously say hello to them. Networking is important to us. We will be referencing some different links throughout the presentation. We'll make sure to put those in the chat box for you. And then of course, if anything happens, which hopefully nothing will go wonky today, please jot down shelby@corpevent.com. She is the person who, you can see her right now, but she really manages all the back end of these calls for us. So next. For those of you who don't know who Community is, Ed, do you want to take over and say a couple words since this is your baby?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. And I want to shout out to my team, Shelby and Trisha as well, for all your help with this. The idea, and we're still kind of in the genesis of the concept, is to be able to provide additional resources, both educational and networking, and also promotions for our client base and for business professionals that we know. We're really in a position that we realize the importance of being able to share best practices, learn tips and tricks, really be able to do our work more efficiently and be able to help our nonprofit, in some cases for-profit clients and friends be able to be more efficient and effective with their work. So we are, I believe, recording this, so we will also promote it out to our contact base, but I think certainly I appreciate the time that everyone's taking to be part of it, because sometimes being part of the actual session is better than just listening in afterwards. So thank you, everyone, and I will look forward to the session.
Thank you, Ed. Without any further ado, we are really, like I said, we're very fortunate to have Valerie with us. We really appreciate her partnering with us on this series for the leadership series. And as you can see, she has a lot of accolades, but I am not going to go into detail. I would prefer Valerie do that for you. So we'll hand it over to you, Val.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I want to say thanks again for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to an ongoing partnership. I want to say thank you to everyone who has taken your time out of your busy schedules, especially during lunch, to meet with us. All right, so without further ado, I am going to share my screen. All right, some of you may have heard of the book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and we're going to focus on the first 7 laws today. If you haven't had a chance, as it's been mentioned before, you should try to pick up the book. I guarantee you'll find the lesson on every page. But if you get the 25th anniversary version of the book, it's an audio book. So it's been updated to include more modern examples, but you still have the same basic laws. All right. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in chat. All right. So this slide presentation was developed by myself, but it's based, almost verbatim on John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Wanted to make sure that we did not miss anything, but the point is to share with you the exact laws that he provided, but then give you some, I guess, for lack of a better word, inside information, what we might pull from personal experiences, and then go from there. And again, we want to thank the Chicago Association of Management for the opportunity to share. This is a 4-part series, and please, be sure to invite others. You will have access to this recording afterwards. And we basically want to focus on making sure that, if you're not on that journey to increase your leadership potential, by the time you're done, you will be well on your way, and we'll point the way for you. A little bit about nonprofit Utopia. We're the ideal community for emerging nonprofit leaders who want to increase their leadership skills, as well as make sure that they can make an impact to their clients and community while strengthening their organizations. We have an online community where folks can share their concerns on a day-to-day basis. And Crystal Overton is here. She is one of our members. If you have any questions about how it really feels to be a member, feel free to ask Crystal. Our mission is to develop the next generation of ethical nonprofit leaders. We provide ongoing professional development and networking opportunities for the next generation of ethical leaders. And our overarching goal is to give our members the tools that they need to develop strong organizations that will make a lasting impact. So we do this through the online community. We have consulting, we have courses, as well as coaching. And our vision is more of a global vision. And we want to make sure that we make our contribution to strengthening the global nonprofit sector by providing training and development opportunities for up to 50,000 people between now and 2033. You can go to our website, nonprofitutopia.com, or you can go to our online community, nonprofitutopia.mn.co, for further information. And again, in a nutshell, I basically help my clients to move the needle on some of their most pressing problems. And over the years, I've helped over 750 people meet their professional development goals and raise over $100 million through grant writing, technical assistance. All right. So now to get into why we're really here. The first of the 21 laws is the law of the lid. Leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. So basically what that's saying is that our organizations can go no higher than we, as our organization's leaders or part of our leadership team. Whatever our capacity is, that is as far as our organizations are going. There are ways that we can lift the lid, so to speak, on our potential, and we'll go through some of those ways as we advance through the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. All right, so for those of you who have started reading the book, you may or may not have paid attention to these two graphics. So John Maxwell tells us, what can happen with our organizations with a leadership level of 1 or a leadership level of 6, right? So if we were to assess our own leadership capabilities and we find ourselves at a very low level of leadership, but we have a very high level of activity and dedication to success, right? So if we rate ourselves a 1, but we're ranking, say, an 8 in terms of, our willingness to really work to make our organization successful, this little area in gray is about where we will be in terms of effectiveness. So we can work and work and work all day long, but if we're not increasing our leadership ability, we are going to be like a little hamster that is continually running on that little treadwheel rather. And here we can expend the same amount of energy that is going through self-improvement, but if we self-improvement as well as just going through the methods or going through the motions, so to speak, of increasing, I'm sorry, I'm tongue-tied, of increasing our effectiveness, right? But if we focus on strengthening our leadership ability, even though we haven't increased our dedication to success one iota, we have, not infinitely, but we have significantly multiplied our ability to be effective, right? So our goal is to work smart. We're going to focus on ourselves and increasing our level of effectiveness by increasing our leadership ability. And yes, we want to focus on building systems and processes, right? Making sure those are efficient, but we really want to focus more time developing ourselves, developing the people around us so we can get exponential growth. All right. So a very, very common way of changing the direction of organizations is to change the leader, right? So that usually means firing the leader. We can do that, right, if we want to do an organizational turnaround. But John Maxwell suggests that, let that not necessarily be your first course of action. We can literally raise the lid of that leader. And by raising the lid of that leader, we increase the potential of the organization altogether. So before we talk about different ways to raise the lid, right, we're going to pause, and not literally pause, but we're going to talk about ways that you could try this at home. At the end of this series, I'm going to provide you with, handwritten assessments that you can use. But for right now, just think about this. You want to rate your leadership ability on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being poor and 10 being excellent. And then you're going to rate the leadership of 4 or 5 people who work with you. You're going to ask everyone in your organization to rate you as well as the team. And then after you look at the results, you want to formulate a plan to raise the lid number for the team. So this is increasing not only your own influence, your own leadership, but you're lifting all boats as well. You are having the whole team to focus on team results and how the team can bond together and work together to achieve common goals. And once you assess your leadership level, you want to look at the team as a whole, you want to look at the key players. That's going to be your baseline. And from time to time, it might help you to do the same assessment so you can chart your growth over time. And again, on week 4, we're going to give you the tools you need. So you'll be looking in week 4, not only are you going to be assessing your leadership skills, but you're going to be also looking at your preferred environment in which to lead. The second law is the law of influence, and it says the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes we get so bogged down into leadership and we think it's some nebulous thing from on high, some ideal that we can never, ever attain. But the truth of the matter is we are all leaders. And the truth of the matter of leadership is really influence, nothing more than nothing less. And your influence, it may be impacted by your title, right? But it really is more than a title. Our weaker leaders tend to be empowered by the title and the title only. But our real leadership comes from within, right? And we really want to get to a point where people are following us not because they have to, but because they want to. All right. So people tend to choose who they're going to follow. Based on they have to have a certain level of comfort, but character matters, experience matters, knowledge matters. All right, so there are 5 common myths about leadership. And the first one is that if you're a manager, then you must be a leader. And that's not necessarily true. As we know, managers have already bought into the vision of a leader, and it is very possible to be a manager and a leader, but leadership in and of itself is not necessarily measured by management ability alone. All right. The entrepreneur myth. People think that just because you're in business for yourself, that you're naturally a leader. I mean, after all, you were motivated enough to strike it on your own, take a different path, so you must be a leader. And that's not necessarily true. We as entrepreneurs, we understand our business, we understand how to sell, but selling in and of itself is not necessarily leadership. The third myth is the myth of knowledge. We tend to think that because we're smart, we're bright, we really know our craft, then truly we must be a leader. But all you have to do is go on campus, especially in campus of these large universities, and it's not unusual for you to run into people who are very, very strong in science, very strong in policy. They're wonkish, but they're not necessarily leaders. They understand, they have a lot of knowledge, but they're not necessarily leading people because they're not necessarily influencing people directly to follow them, right? And then there's the myth of being a pioneer. There's a myth that says that just because you're the first one to do something, you're the first one out of the gate, then you must be a leader. And that can be true for a while, but being first is not necessarily being a leader as well. If you don't have people following you, then you are not a leader. And then the last one is the position myth. We think because we have a certain title, that suggests that we're in leadership, that we're actually leaders. And I'm sure that, we've all been in positions where we have been, quote unquote, the leader, but there was someone in our group that was more influential with the group, and we had to go to that person if we wanted to get anything done so that we could move our group forward. All right. So when we talk about the levels of influence, which is the same as leadership, there are 5. The first one is position level influence. That is, people follow you because they have to. And this usually happens on a job. In a volunteer situation, like with church ministry, or if you're working with a volunteer organization, people don't necessarily have to follow you. If you really want to find out whether or not you're a strong leader, work in a position where you have to get people to do something and you can't pay them a cent. The next level is permission level influence, and that's when people follow you because they make a choice, they choose to. And then the third one is production level influence, and that's when people follow you because they're impressed with what you've been able to achieve, and they want to learn what it is that you have, that you've learned, so that they can replicate your results. And a smart leader actually wants to be able to surpass what they have learned from others. And then our next level is people development level influence. And that's when people follow you because of the relationships that they have with you and the way that you have poured into them and developed them. And then personhood level influence is where people follow you because you've developed so many leaders. Notice it says leaders and not followers. You've developed so many leaders over the years that you become larger than life. And a clear example of that is John Maxwell himself. All right, and if you have any questions, continue to post them in chat. The third level of leadership is the law of process, and that is to remind us that leadership develops daily and not in one day. So we have a tendency, we get very frustrated if we decide, one day that we're going to start focusing on our leadership skills, and we start experimenting on all of our friends and associates, and we don't see anything happen. And that's normal. Leadership is a developmental process, and it's really going to be an ongoing life learning process. So we shouldn't feel discouraged if we don't see results the day that we decide that we're going to be leaders. All right, so in summary, there are 4 stages of leadership growth, and you can look at this chart. The way it's arranged is the columns. We have on the left column, ineffective and effective. And then on our rows, we have unaware and aware. So the first stage is, I don't know what I don't know. At that point, not only are you ineffective, but you're unaware that you're ineffective, because really at this point, you're not cognizant of the need to be a leader. And then at some point in all of our lives, we become painfully aware that we need to learn more. So at this point, we know what we don't know, and we're aware of it, and we're ineffective. Why? Because we haven't really gone through the developmental phase where we're self-improving, right? And then at the next level, we're working on ourselves, and after a point in time, we're growing and it starts to show. So not only do we see it, but our colleagues begin to notice the growth, and you begin to notice the growth because your impact is going to be greater. You're going to be able to see that you're better able to not only meet goals alone, but you're able to move your teams forward and make a greater impact for yourself as well as for the team. You're able to really, really see the good in others. And then you practice this so much that you go to the 4th level, is because I simply go because of what I know. At that point, your self-improvement gets on autopilot, right? And then people begin to just become, you become a magnet for others, sort of like the Piper. All right, number 4, the law of navigation. Anybody can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to actually chart the course. All right, and Maxwell shared some really good examples about people, differences in people who were charting the course versus not being prepared. And his acronym here is plan ahead, right? And for every one of the letters in plan ahead, he has a lesson. The first is to predetermine your course. The second is to lay out your goals. A is for adjust your priorities. N is for notify your team. All too often, we're doing all the right things. We might do the first one. We might predetermine the course. We might lay out the goals for our team, and we might even adjust the priorities based on what's going on in the environment. But sometimes we just feel a need to get things done so quickly that we might not necessarily notify our team, or we might notify the team but not include the team. So it really should be more than notifying the team. And if you read the book, you'll see that it's more than notifying the team. It's actually sitting down with them, casting your vision, and letting them know how they fit in, and then having them to accept what you have shared with them, and then they could go abroad, within the organization and evangelize. But if we miss that step of notifying the team, but most importantly, I think he just used notify because he needed a word for in plan ahead. If we skip that in, then we will find ourselves in a position where our team doesn't necessarily trust us. And that could be a huge, huge no-no. So we want to notify the team, and within this notifying the team, you're casting the vision, you're giving them time to give input, right? And buy-in, and then you allow time for acceptance, and then you head into action. And when we head into action, that means they're evangelizing within their own groups, and then the whole organization in and of itself can start to move ahead. And it's important for you to expect problems, because nothing is ever is never perfect, but the more planning you do, the better you're able to expect the problems and have, a ready-made solution for what you've anticipated. And then you also want to always point to successes. So every step of the way, every little win that you get, you want to make sure that you remind the group, because, let's be clear, a lot of what we do, we're not going to see change immediately. We're going to see very, very incremental growth, and it might even be like watching paint dry. And you got to keep people motivated. And one way to keep people motivated is to remind them of the success that was made to date. And you want to remind them of their particular contribution to that success. And then you want to daily review your progress. So at this point, it's really important, to have some mechanism for keeping track. So a good way of doing that is to develop a scorecard where you're kind of scoring yourself on certain goals and objectives that you had intended to make. And then you will indicate whether or not you have exceeded the mark, whether you made the mark, or there is some progress to be made before you actually succeed in that area. So in summary, a leader is a navigator. And as a leader, you need to see the big picture, and you probably need to see the picture before anyone else can, right? You need to be able to recognize the opportunities. You need to also identify the resources that you need along the way, right? You need to know who you need on your team, what skills they need. You need to be able to anticipate any problems along the way, and you need to be able to navigate around any landmines that you might have and just move toward that vision. But again, it's really important to keep progress of your progress as you move, so it doesn't feel like you're lingering in one place. All right. So law number 5 is the law of E.F. Hutton. When the real leader speaks, people listen. And this picture is from one of the commercials. If you're a person of a certain age, you might remember the E.F. Hutton commercial where people were in a restaurant and a guy was talking about his broker, and he was mentioning that his broker was E.F. Hutton, and everybody in the whole restaurant stopped to listen to see what E.F. Hutton had to say about the market. And the same dynamic is true, in our organizations. Many times we don't really think about it, but, every organization has one person who might not have a title, right, that everybody listens to, right? And nothing happens unless that particular person has given the buy-in. And it doesn't matter if that person is president. And in many cases, it may not be the president. Again, it could be someone who doesn't even have a title. All right. And as I indicated before, there is a difference between people who hold a position and people who are real leaders. Positional leaders tend to speak first, whereas real leaders, they listen, they kind of gauge what's going on, assessing the problem, assessing the dynamics in the room, and they're going to speak later. The positional leaders, they can't do anything without the influence of the real leader in the room in order to get things done. If you are a real leader, then you only need your own influence in order to make things happen. if you are a positional leader, meaning that, you're the president, you're vice president, you're secretary, treasurer, you're committee chair. If you're simply a positional leader, and that's not to diminish the role, but if you are a positional leader where people only follow you because you're in that position, and the way you'll know this is, once you no longer have that title, is to see if people still follow you. If people don't feel the need to follow you, then you know that you are a positional leader. On the other hand, if you are a real leader, if you have that title or don't have that title, you influence every leader in the room as well as the other rank and file people in the room. And also a real leader, when they leave an organization or when they leave the position and they're followed by someone who is not as strong a leader, their impact is going to be felt. And in fact, when you're a strong leader and you leave the organization, you have the capability of taking people with you, whether you do it intentionally or not, people want to follow you. All right, so the 7 key areas in a leader's life that cause him or her to step forward as leaders. The first thing is our character, and that's who we are, right? Are we people, that people want to follow? Are we trustworthy? When we look at our relationships, it's all about who we know. When we look at knowledge, it's what we know. When we look at our intuition, that is our ability to be able to see something beyond what's on the map, beyond what's in the numbers, so to speak. We have a certain sense about what we should do next, even though the data is incomplete, even though the information is incomplete. We just know it at a gut level what to do. Our experience is where we've been. So people can follow us because we've been where we're trying to take them. And then our past successes, people want to follow us because if we've done it before, not only have we done it before, but we had some success at it before, then they're willing to follow us. And then our ability, what is it that we can do? So when we combine all of these things, these become, areas that impact our ability to lead others. And in summary, people listen not necessarily because the truth is being communicated in the message, and I think we're painfully aware of that today, but because of their respect for the speaker. All right, so let me pause to say that you can be a leader, right? You can be an ethical leader or you can be an unethical leader. Both ethical leaders and unethical leaders have very similar characteristics, right? But the difference is an ethical leader is going to try to do things in a manner that are right, that follow the book, whereas an unethical leader is going to do it by any means necessary. He or she doesn't care who they hurt in the process, as long as they achieve a certain result. All right, so trust is the foundation of leadership, and this is the foundation for law number 6, the law of solid ground. All right, so again, people need to be able to trust the leader. They need to be able to trust the leadership in our organization, and that starts with us, right? And no matter what we do, we could be very capable, we can be well known, we can have all kinds of networks, but if people don't trust us, if we don't have the character, right? I think people have heard the expression, don't go where your character can't sustain you, right? If we don't have strong character, at some point, we're going to have to relinquish our leadership, and usually it's not because we want to. All right, and then we also need to look at the fact that every action that we take is either a deposit or withdrawal. So deposit in the bank of our ability to lead others, or withdrawal. If it's a positive reinforcement of our leadership, then all we're going to do is add goodwill, right, to our leadership or people's view of us. And if we do things to create an environment of distrust, then that's going to be a withdrawal. So in order to earn trust, we need to be consistent with our character, right? And we need to also be consistent in terms of our competence. So you're going to need to be a lifelong learner, right? So when you show integrity, your life as a leader will consistently improve over time. All right. So one of the hardest things to do to regain trust is lose it through a character flaw. You know, people will forgive you if you make an honest mistake, or if you're not the sharpest person in the room, if you're not necessarily the most skilled person in the room and you make a mistake. But for those issues where it becomes a matter of the heart, you know, it takes a long, long time to recuperate, especially if you haven't taken the time to build that foundation of trust. Those leaders who have taken the time to build a strong foundation of trust, if there's a minor character flaw, then people can forgive you. But if it's major, you can forget it. All right. So again, you want to be consistent. You want to earn people's respect. Now, this matrix here, Richard Barrett's trust matrix, this was not in the Maxwell book. I thought it was really, really important to share this because trust, as we can find out, is really not so much about whether or not we're telling the truth. It's a very complex emotion. It involves our character as well as our competence. So when we look at the character side, intent and integrity, you know, and then under those intent and integrity, people want to know if we really care about them, right? Because people want to know that you care about them before they care to know, right, anything that you have to say to them. We have to be transparent. We need to be open. And integrity deals with honesty and fairness and authenticity. Our competence, you know, relates to our skills and the results that we've been able to show over time. And all of these together inform whether or not, you know, people at a gut level are going to trust you. And then next is the law of respect, where people naturally follow people who are stronger than themselves. And I see we only have 15 minutes. All right. So when we look at the law of respect, when we first get together, and you'll probably observe this in your groups, leaders tend to go their own way until, you know, organically the natural leaders of the group, you know, appear, and then people begin to change their direction to follow that leader. So people follow leaders that they respect. And, you know, this translates into our work environment, you know, when our clients and our staffs look at us, and our shareholders, they'll follow us when they see that our decisions are made on their behalf in their best interest and not because of our selfish motives. And in order to attract quality people, you know, we attract who we are as leaders, right? So if you look at your team and you're not happy with the results, you know, don't go and blame the team. Look at yourself first, right? And see what it is that you can do. And I'm not saying you, but that I include myself as well. See what we can do to improve ourselves, and we can get different results. And usually we find, you know, when it's hard for people to commit to what we like them to do, you know, that might be some big project or whatever. It's not because the project or the idea is flawed. It might be, in some cases, because people don't fully trust that we're able to lead the group where the group wants to be. All right, so that's my contact information. I can post it, but in the interest of time, I am going to stop sharing. We're going to break out in our groups. In the interest of time, we're not necessarily going to go in order. Those of you who can stay to hear everyone else's responses, that would be wonderful. But we want to start with group number 2. Yeah, that was great. We needed more time. Yeah.
We were just saying that too, Judy.
Yeah, when I hear lunch and learn in 1 hour, I realized this was an aggressive program. But can we hear from group number 2? Is there a spokesperson for group number 2 who wants to share?
And that would be the Law of Influence group.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Dennis or Judy.
Okay, sure. So I think the biggest thing that we discussed was, a leader versus a manager. A leader is someone who you aspire to follow and you want to follow, and there's feelings behind it, generally speaking, and it's less forced compared to someone who's in a manager role and taking that approach to things.
Awesome. Were you guys able to share any personal experiences that you can share and not embarrass anybody in the room?
I shared the experience of how I work with 2 people I have to report to. One person here, our director of development, and someone else in New York, because our New York location sends me donors to cultivate and solicit. And the person who was local is really a manager in my mind. And she fits into a couple of other categories. Like I deal with her in the way that I do because of her position. And then the woman in New York is such a leader to me. And one of the ways that I characterize her as a leader is that, I guess if you want to use influence, she influences me very strongly and pours into me and helps me to be a better fundraiser.
So you just demonstrated a very, very good point. The very last thing we talked about was respect. How as we come together as a group, we typically go our own ways, but then immediately, or rather over time, the real leaders emerge, and then we switch our directions based on the person's leadership ability. And on the other hand, there's one person you follow because this is a positional leader, is what I'm hearing, not because you want to. Once this person leaves his or her position, you probably won't be following that person, right? You're following him just because you have.
Another point on it was that we've talked about with a leader, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to just, raise your hand, say, this is my opinion, and have a very collegial, open-minded discussion. And sometimes with a manager, I don't know if that always happens, right? It's more, this is the way we do it. I think, Judith, you were talking about your manager person as being, this is what I'm doing. I don't have to know anything else, right?
Right.
So have that back and forth conversation, I think, is critical.
So how do you create a safe environment in which you can lead? If you're a manager, right? How do you create a safe environment where you can lead people where they haven't gone before and test some of the boundaries?
You certainly have to be open. You have to communicate that. You have to keep a low. This is the way I would do it. I'm not going to say everyone has to.
Right.
Keep a level, a temperament level that doesn't scare someone away, that makes someone feel comfortable to be able to share and to be able to really think about what people tell you and not just kind of push it off.
So it sounds like you have to be vulnerable is what I'm hearing. And that's a delicate dance too, being vulnerable without being weak. It's like, how do you do that? All right, I'm so sorry. I'm getting carried away. Is there another group that would like to share? And I know we're so far a minute over time. Is there another group that would like to share?
I would like to nominate Twana. Twana Watts to represent our group.
Okay. Thank you for that, Tina. Our group, I don't know what number we was. I'm so sorry, you all. I don't know what group we were, but our question was, how do you, I think, add value to a person? And we all share some very good points. But what I was saying was that value is, for me, can be added to a person about how you carry a person. And I almost go back to what you all were just saying about being in a safe place. Like, you know, if you're a leader, how can you be in a safe place to even to do this? But even as a leader, how do you show your team members how you value them? And I think one of the biggest ways, the most important ways, is how you carry those that you work with. So if you carry me, if you carry me well, I know you value me. If you don't carry me well, I know that there is no value that you have for me, and that you're just expecting me to complete something. And so there's a difference in valuing a person and the expectation of them to come in and to do a job. And I just use the example of Tina as to how she just showed me that she values what she do. She values her community, and she values people that are doing the same things as her. So when I said who I was and what it was that I do, she instantly said, "Hey, what are you doing June 19th? I said, "Well, I don't really know." She said, "Well, that's okay, don't worry about it. We got something for you to do. We out at Columbus Park. This is what we doing. And if you got something that you do with the kids and things, we got a table and a spot for you. Come on out." That right there instantly show value of what she does. And she values the people that are doing the things that she's doing in the community. And so that was just what we came up with at our group.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Did anyone else from the group want to share? And you notice too that Tina didn't draw attention to herself. She immediately put the spotlight on someone else. Anyone else from the group?
No, I'm part of the group, and it was just really wonderful to hear exactly what Tina and Tawana were saying, because when I first got the question and I saw it, it's like, what does it mean to add value to someone? And I just, I felt like I looked at it in a negative sort of way. Like, who am I to give value to someone else? I felt like, you know, I'm nobody. I mean, I don't want to say I'm nobody, but right. Who am I to give value? But then when I felt like, but then when they expanded on the question, you know, I'm in total agreement. It's like, you know, what do you do every day to make sure that people around you, whether it's your, you know, your own family, or whether it's your colleagues at work, or people that you just associate with, even the bus driver on the way home, it's like, do you walk out and say thank you, or do you just walk out on your phone and not even acknowledge? But so I was able to look at the question in a different light. I just felt like at first I thought, who's Tula to value somebody? That's I'm nobody. I don't, how can I place a value on someone? But I really appreciated the way that they turned it around me.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is, you are a leader. You might not perceive yourself that way, because sometimes true leaders don't go around saying, "Oh, I'm the leader. I'm the leader."
People
truly, okay, those might be positional leaders who have to remind you. But some of the most powerful leaders I know don't have to walk in a room and announce themselves and their title.
Right, and
they just do.
And one thing I feel, as far as being a leader, if you have the ability to edify a person, to elevate them, it's about empowering others, and it's not about placing the emphasis on yourself. It's about empowering others and making others feel appreciated, because everyone will do great if they feel appreciated. You will feel more attached to a project, to a program, if you feel that you're needed. And so being a leader, I feel, is helping everyone understand their purpose and their importance to accomplishing a goal.
Awesome. All right. Is any questions or comments from anyone before we move to the next group? Tula, it sounds like you had
Oh,
something to say.
yeah,
Uh,
sorry, I'm sorry. I do have to go because I have another meeting that I have to prepare for, but it was really a great opportunity to meet everyone today, Tina and Tuana, and just talk with you. And then, of course, Valerie, thank you. But thanks so much, everyone. And we'll see you 2 weeks from now.
yes.
Okay.
Awesome.
Take care.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good day, Tolu.
All right.
Take care, Tula.
It looks like everybody who remains has already gone. Right. All righty. I want
Well,
to
I
say,
think didn't we have Crystal and Candace were in group 1, correct?
Right. Candace, you can take it away.
I figured this was gonna happen. I was writing notes. Okay. For this very reason. We started talking, and like everyone else, wanted more time. But our question was, how do you kind of know what characteristics make up leadership, and what are some clear signs of weaknesses and strengths? And I think the thing that we focused on most were who's following you. And so really thinking about, why are those followers there? What are their intentions? Meaning to some of the points that you made earlier, Valerie, around do they have to follow you, right? Is this positional leadership? Is it out of fear? Is it out of respect? Is it something you gained from them? They're them being willing to help you achieve whatever mission. Why are they doing that? And to be honest with yourselves, so there's some level of reflection that needs to be done on a personal level when you're thinking about leadership. And then having the courage to really, how do you say this? So understanding that if you are a leader, and I think Ed made this point a little earlier, that 100% of the people aren't going to be happy with your leadership, right? So understanding that that's okay, and being able to, again, be reflective on that and say, sure, you're not 100% of the people are not going to agree with me. And for those that don't, what are the conversations that we can then have to discuss that and hopefully come to some kind of consensus? And, one of my favorite things is how can we disagree without being disagreeable? So we can still be walking that path. So that's some of the things we talked about before we unfortunately had to come back to the room. Well, not unfortunately, it's good to see everybody, but
I get it. Yeah. So what is it that you look for in a leader?
Personally, I look for transparency. I look for people who have reflective practices. I'm really big on reflection. So if you aren't self-aware and can't be vulnerable and can't be transparent about your own process, you then don't have my buy-in. So those are some of those big things. The big things. And you talked about vulnerability. I think it's important for people. So many people are motivated by perfection. And I think as a leader, you have to be willing to say, I know I'm not perfect. I know I can make this mistake. I know I don't know everything. So I then have to use the capacity of the people who have those traits and bring them in to help build whatever we're building together. So those are some of my big things for leadership.
Okay. Crystal, did you have anything to add?
Oh my God, she was just hitting it right and left, and I have nothing else to say except for.
I'm sorry, can you adjust your screen so we can see your full face? Is that possible?
Okay, you need to see my full face?
Yes, your beautiful face.
Okay.
It's friendlier that way.
It was so thorough. What she relayed in terms of what we discussed. And the only thing I can think of, because she hit every point that we said, courage, if someone isn't agreeing with you as a leader. I really don't have anything else to say.
Okay. All
I
right.
say sometimes to people who I see as leaders, and they may, oh, I can't do that. And I say, oh, you can have butterflies, but just let them fly in formation. So, that's what I try to encourage people who are kind of shying away from being a leader.
Okay, awesome. All right, thank you. Is there any comment from the floor on anything that we've discussed, whether it be from the slides or from, just listening to others share? Any comments? Oh, right. Yeah, one question from the audience before we broke out. What is the responsibility of those who are leading to give the floor to others to give them an opportunity to lead? It's really, really important. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation or an organization where the people who were leading, they would do all of the work, right? And not train others who would come after them. They would never offer any mentoring opportunities. They would never offer any training opportunities because they felt like they wanted to be in charge, right? But there's a question that came up. What would you prefer? Would you rather train people so that they can be competitive with you, or they could leave and go and get money somewhere else? Or would you rather be stuck with people who have not reached their potential and are a drain on the organization? And in response, the answer should always be, you should take a chance and train people around you, right? Take that chance that they're going to be competitive with you. Take that chance that they could leave and get more money, because ultimately when they are better equipped, they're going to actually cause the organization to move forward. Our responsibility as leaders is not to hoard information. It's not to have everybody look at how wonderful and how great we are and all of that, right? Our responsibility as leaders is to train other leaders, and that means pouring into others. And of course, we need to be selective about who we pour into and how much and what. Different people, I guess, are worthy, so to speak, for lack of a better word, of more of your attention than others. But everybody on the team needs to be groomed for some sort of leadership. And when we make decisions as leaders, it's not our way or the highway. We really do need buy-in. And one of the best ways to get buy-in is not to pronounce from on high, what is going to be done, right? Is to share your vision. That means talk about things in very general terms, right? But leaving room for alternative ways to getting to that result other than what you had predetermined. All righty. And I think Tawana had some really good points. Tawana, did you want to share what you had to say?
No, I just put it in the chat. I was just saying that a leader training someone to do what they're doing. Again, it goes back to showing value. It goes to sharing the wealth of what is out there and what's to come. And also a leader training the next person. It also shows that there is no intimidation of you becoming a better leader than I am, because in some areas in leadership, we probably don't have all of our points together. And the person that you're training you know, could possibly, as you're training them, can see the things that needed to be tweaked or that needs to be drawn back or added to. And so now when they're in that position, they're now either tweaking what needs to be tweaked, pulling back what needs to be pulled back, or adding more to what needs to needed that addition. And ultimately the leader that trained you sees that, and guess what? They value that. And so I'm learning, this is all had to be learned, you know, at a hard lesson for me with the leaders that I was with. They were very good in some areas, but in some areas they were not the best in being a leader. And so I just had to learn from that although they wasn't good in this area, doesn't mean that they, you know, overall wasn't a good leader, because they then came back and paid it, you know, put the spotlight on that, and, you know, and recognize that. But when a leader doesn't recognize that they need some help, or they need some things that they need to brush up on, or they don't want to share the wealth that they have. And wealth, I'm not talking about money, because that's not that's not what real leaders look for, because we know that can be all blown away. The wealth that I'm speaking of is the wisdom, is the knowledge, is the skills that are being passed down from one leader to the next. And so, yeah, that's my thought.
Oh, that's beautiful. Did anyone else have any other thoughts before we close? All righty, I want to say thank you to everyone. We have, you know, we're over time and we still have the majority of the people who started with us. So I think that speaks volumes. I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to lead today's discussion, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks, and I will turn this over to you. Is it Kim?
You can turn it over to Kim. Thanks so much, Valerie. That was great. I wonder if we should maybe send something out to get a feeling from everybody if they'd like it to go 15 minutes longer. In general, if we think that's necessary, we can talk a little bit about that. But for those who are still on, you can always email Valerie or I and let us know. And then don't forget, the next one's coming up, obviously, will be 2 weeks from today, starting at noon. And then 2 weeks, each 2 weeks, right? They'll start at noon on Wednesday. Right. So just an FYI. And we do have a networking event coming up, but I don't have the details yet. Okay. But I will share that with you hopefully next time.
Okay, awesome.
So thanks for joining us, everybody.